Essay number 94, 6 signs you have a healthy social sensitivity. You think something's wrong with you because you don't want to go to that party. You think you're broken because you'd rather stay home with a book than go to happy hour. You think you need therapy because you only have 3 close friends, while everyone else seems to have 30. Let me tell you something that's going to blow your mind. You're not antisocial. You're not socially anxious. You're not broken. You're just living in a world that's convinced you that extroversion is the default setting for humans, and anything else is a malfunction. We live in a culture that worships extroversion. Every job wants a people person. Every social media platform rewards the loudest voices. Every self-help guru tells you to network more, socialize more, put yourself out there more. And if you don't want to, if crowds drain you, if you prefer deep conversations with one person over surface chatter with 20, well, clearly you have social anxiety. Clearly you need to fix yourself. Clearly you're not normal. But here's what nobody's telling you. We've completely lost track of what healthy social sensitivity actually looks like. We're throwing around terms like antisocial and social anxiety disorder like they're personality quirks instead of clinical diagnoses. We're pathologizing normal human behavior. We're making people feel broken for being exactly how they're supposed to be. So let me give you 6 signs that your social sensitivity isn't a problem to fix. It's completely, perfectly, beautifully normal. Sign 1. You experience some degree of social anxiety in unfamiliar situations. Guess what? That's not a disorder. That's intelligence. Social anxiety at its core is your brain trying to protect you. It's recognizing that you're in a situation where you might be judged, where social dynamics are at play, where you need to be aware of how you're coming across. The person who walks into a room full of strangers with zero anxiety, they're either drunk or lacking basic social awareness. A little anxiety means you're smart enough to recognize the complexity of social situations. It means you understand that impressions matter, that relationships have nuances, that human interaction is complicated. Now, if that anxiety paralyzes you, if it keeps you from living your life, that's different. But feeling nervous before a presentation, getting butterflies before a first date, needing a minute to psych yourself up before walking into a party, that's not a disorder. That's being human. Actually, studies show that people with higher intelligence tend to have more social anxiety. You know why? Because they're smart enough to see all the ways things could go wrong. They're aware enough to notice subtle social cues. They're conscious enough to care about their impact on others. Your social anxiety isn't a weakness. It's your brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keeping you socially calibrated. The problem isn't the anxiety. The problem is that we've been taught to see it as a problem. Sign 2. You desire solitude because being alone is emotionally enriching, not because you're avoiding people out of fear. There's a massive difference between isolation and solitude, and most people don't understand it. Isolation is hiding from the world because you're afraid of it. It's canceling plans because you think people don't really want you there. It's staying home because you feel unworthy of connection. That's not healthy. But solitude is choosing to be alone because it feeds your soul. It's staying home because that's where you recharge. It's preferring your own company because you genuinely enjoy it. If you're choosing solitude because it enriches you, because it gives you space to think and create and just be, that's not antisocial, that's self-care. That's knowing yourself well enough to know what you need. The extroverted world wants you to believe that being alone is sad, that solitude is loneliness, that if you're not constantly surrounded by people, something's wrong with you. But some of the greatest minds in history were solitary. Einstein, Tesla, Emily Dickinson, they didn't create their masterpieces at parties. You're not broken for needing alone time. You're just honoring your own rhythms instead of forcing yourself into society's mold. Sign 3. You only enjoy the company of a few, select people. Here's a truth bomb for you. You're not supposed to like everybody. I know that's shocking in our love and light culture where we're all supposed to be spreading positivity and connecting with everyone. But saying you like everybody is actually a sign of disconnection from yourself. If you genuinely liked everyone, it would mean you have no preferences, no boundaries, no individual taste. It would mean you're so disconnected from your own feelings that you can't even tell who you resonate with and who you don't. We're biologically wired to have a small inner circle. Anthropologists call it Dunbar's number, the cognitive limit to the number of people with whom we can maintain stable social relationships. And guess what that number is? About a 150. And that's for all relationships. Your actual close relationships? Maybe 5. You're not antisocial for having 3 close friends while someone else has 30 acquaintances. You're just investing deeply rather than spreading yourself thin. You're choosing quality over quantity. You're being selective with your energy, and that's not a flaw, it's wisdom. The person who claims to be friends with everyone, they're not friends with anyone. They're performing friendship. They're collecting social connections like Pokemon cards. But you're building real relationships. And that takes selectivity. Sign 4. You say no to plans when you want to say no. This might be the most important sign of healthy social sensitivity. You can actually say no. You don't go to every event because you feel obligated. You don't show up places because you're afraid of what people will think if you don't. You don't sacrifice your mental health for social obligations. When you don't want to go to something, you don't go. When you need a night in, you take it. When certain people drain your energy, you limit your time with them. This isn't being antisocial. This is having boundaries. This is respecting your own needs. This is understanding that your energy is finite and choosing where to spend it. The person who says yes to everything isn't socially healthy. They're a people pleaser who's probably heading for burnout. The person who can say, "Thanks for the invite, but I'm going to pass," is someone who knows themselves and respects their own limits. In our culture of FOMO and constant connectivity, saying no is radical. It's declaring that your well-being matters more than social expectations. And that's not antisocial, that's self-respect. Sign 5. You analyze social situations to understand them better, not to feed your anxiety. There's a difference between reflection and rumination, and most people don't know where the line is. Reflection is thinking about a social interaction to understand it better. Maybe you said something that didn't land well, and you're figuring out why. Maybe you noticed a pattern in how certain people treat you, and you're processing what that means. This is healthy. This is how we learn and grow. Rumination is replaying the same moment over and over, creating catastrophic interpretations, building evidence for irrational beliefs. They looked at me funny, so they must hate me. I stuttered during my presentation, so everyone thinks I'm incompetent. This is anxiety feeding on itself. If you're analyzing social situations to become more aware, to understand unconscious patterns, to improve your communication, that's not social anxiety, that's social intelligence. You're doing the work of understanding human interaction, which is incredibly complex. The problem isn't that you think about social interactions. The problem is when that thinking becomes obsessive, when it's designed to reinforce anxiety rather than create understanding. Sign 6. You worry that your social anxiety is abnormal. Here's the most ironic sign of all. If you're worried about whether your social sensitivity is normal, it probably is. People with actual, clinical social disorders often don't recognize them as disorders. They think everyone feels the way they do. They can't imagine social interaction being different. But you're worried about it, you're questioning it, you're wondering if you need help. That self-awareness itself is a sign of health. Worrying about whether you have too much anxiety is probably the most normal thing there is. It's not a sign of having a severe problem. It's a sign of being self-aware enough to handle it if there was one. The people who never question their social functioning, who never wonder if they're too anxious or too antisocial, they're either remarkably healthy or completely lacking in self-awareness. And statistically, it's usually the latter. Here's what I need you to understand. We've created a culture that pathologizes normal human variation. Not everyone is meant to be a social butterfly. Not everyone thrives in groups. Not everyone wants 100 friends. Not everyone enjoys small talk. Not everyone feels energized by social interaction. And that's not a disorder. That's diversity. That's humanity having different types of people who contribute different things. The introvert who needs solitude to create. The highly sensitive person who notices things others miss. The person with select close friendships who goes deep rather than wide. The person who says no to preserve their energy for what matters. These aren't broken extroverts. They're not people who need to be fixed. They're people whose social sensitivity is calibrated differently. And that difference is not a dysfunction, it's a feature. Your social sensitivity is probably exactly where it needs to be. You're not too sensitive. You're not too antisocial. You're not too anxious. You're just living in a world that's told you there's only one right way to be social, and you don't fit that mold. But the mold is the problem, not you. So stop trying to fix your social sensitivity. Stop apologizing for needing alone time. Stop forcing yourself to be more extroverted. Stop pathologizing your perfectly normal human variations. Your social sensitivity isn't something to overcome. It's something to understand, to work with, to honor. You don't need to be more social. You need to be more yourself. And if yourself is someone who prefers books to parties, deep conversations to small talk, solitude to crowds, that's not a problem to solve. That's a life to live, on your terms, according to your sensitivity, in alignment with your actual needs. The world doesn't need more fake extroverts. It needs real people being real about what actually works for them. And if what works for you is different from what works for the majority, that doesn't make you wrong. It makes you exactly who you're supposed to be. So stop worrying about whether your social sensitivity is normal. It is. You are. Now go live accordingly.